second on the floor. Any other discussion? No public input. Vote, please.
Voting is open. Voting is closed. Motion passes unanimously.
Item 3D, we ask the board to consider approval to refer a revision to JCDA, that's Student Code of Conduct, and the remainder of Section G, the personnel, to the Policy Committee.
Okay, do we hear a motion?
I move to refer those.
Motion made by Mr. Westmoreland to refer this to Policy Committee.
Second.
Second by Mr. Dominguez. Any questions? Discussion? No public input? Vote, please.
Voting is open. Voting is closed. Motion passes unanimously.
Item 3E, general updates. I do have a few updates I would like to talk to the board and the public about. Tomorrow we're reopening our schools from having the closure for Hurricane Sally, and we will continue to operate under Phase 3, or we will open tomorrow in Phase 3. And what that means is, for the right now, is that pre-K through 8th grade, pre-K through 8th, will resume classes on the campus 5 days a week, and that will begin tomorrow. Our 9th through 12th grade students will be coming on an AB staggered schedule, and this week it will look like this. We're changing it up a little bit this week to accommodate for the A group missing Monday and Tuesday. So on Wednesday, September 16th, all 9 through 12 students will work virtually from home. On Thursday, the 17th, we'll have Group A. That's last name beginning with A through K. Will attend classes on campus. On Friday, September the 18th, Group B will attend classes on campus, and that's the last name beginning with L through Z. Starting on Monday, this following Monday on September the 21st, the high school weekly schedule will be as follows. We'll have Monday, Tuesday, Group A, Wednesday will be virtual day, and then Thursday and Friday will be Group B. I do want to let the board know and the public know that we want to get our high school students back on the campus, all of them, every day as soon as we can. And the big challenge for that is the 75% bus capacity. What we know is that, many of our high schoolers drive to campus every day or ride with a friend to school. So we will be doing a bus count for beginning next week to get a number on the bus, and after that time, we will be able to add more of our high school, hopefully get them in there 5 days a week like normal. That's what we're hoping for. But it is dependent on the bus loads, and so if there's a parent out there listening, I encourage you, if you can and you have the resources to do so, if you could help us out during this time of Phase 3 to help get students to school and carpool, that would be great assistance to us, and that way we could get all of our kids back on campus every day. So again, we'll begin those bus counts on Monday. I want to talk a little bit about the virtual update. We have the students who have selected full virtual will resume logging into their virtual classroom and working on assignments as been posted by their teacher. The virtual learning option for K-6, we have almost 3,000 students in that option wanting in K-6 that are wanting full virtual. That's their choice. We will continue to make adjustments and improvements to ensure that our students can have a high-quality experience in the virtual world. We're asking our parents to continue to monitor their email, the students' email, and school communications so that we can good communication to our parents. And I want to take just a moment to make a clarification, and we're going to be working to make sure that this message is communicated. For our students that are K-6 or have been K-6 full virtual, and now we're adding in our 7th and 8th graders who choose to be full virtual, so it's like K-8, I've chosen to be full virtual. I want to make clear that these students who are full virtual and they are all working on the OnCourse classroom portal. And if you remember, that's the platform that our teachers began building out. We hired our expert teachers to build this out. They built it out starting back in April. It is meant to teach the student the content of the lessons. And in math, in every grade level, there are actual teaching videos to every module or lesson for students in the OnCourse platform classroom, along with assignments that the student would do as part of their classwork. In ELA, in K2, because those are the youngest, they have teaching videos for every lesson as well in the ELA on the OnCourse platform. And then in ELA for grades 3 through 8, there are videos that are embedded throughout, not for every lesson, but in most lessons on teaching different content strategies. For science and social studies, there are fewer videos because in science and social studies, students are expected to read the content on the OnCourse classroom. There is a website of resources and videos that are supplemental to the OnCourse that students utilize in the content. I'm saying all that to say that teachers in K-8 are mostly using Zoom for office hours if they're using the OnCourse platform, which if at this point, if they've chosen to be full virtual, they're in the OnCourse platform. They are using their Zoom as office hours to help answer questions for students or to maybe sometimes provide technical, assistance if they're having trouble. And also, they can use Zoom to have small groups of students who need reteaching or need additional support other than what they're getting from the OnCourse platform. But Zoom meetings are not required every day, and I think there's the perception out there that if you're not Zooming, you're not doing virtual, and that's not true. The virtual platform is built to teach the students the content. It requires work on the student's part. There are some videos embedded, but there are readings that the students have to do, and like for instance in ELA, and then there's assignments that they have to do. So just because a student doesn't have a Zoom, meeting, doesn't mean that virtual is not happening. Okay. The full virtual option does require students to work independently. However, teachers are monitoring, providing feedback, and will offer individual and small group assistance as it's needed with students. And that's for our students that have been K-6 full virtual, our 7th and 8th grade who are now folding into the full virtual choice. They'll be operating out of the OnCourse classroom. Prior to that, just to be clear, the 7th and 8th grade teachers have been, the 7th and 8th grade students have been taught by their teachers, who many times are using Google Classroom with materials they're uploading. But the OnCourse platform was built to teach students with everything that they need to be successful, and Zoom is a supplement to that. In grades 9 through 12, as these students return to classroom on the AB staggered schedule, their virtual learning will be the same. In other words, until we get all of our students back every day, their teachers at the school will be working with them virtually on the days that they're not at school. Okay? Now, once we say we have enough space on our buses and those high school students come back 5 days a week, then they will switch over to that on-course platform or Edgenuity, which is also built out. It's a complete curriculum to teach students with videos. And there are videos embedded. Many of our high school teachers now, and even our 7th and 8th graders, have been, because they've been using their Google Classroom, have been doing Zoom videos of teaching so that the students can see that. Or they hold Zoom meetings for office hours, for questions, technical assistance, or small group instruction. Last, I want to say that the Curbside Mule pickup, that's for the full virtual students, for families who would like to pick up meals. We have them at 3 sites. We have them at Sumner High, Independence High, and Hammond High, and those will resume tomorrow. So any student that's full virtual can begin again tomorrow picking up their meals for full virtual. And I'll stop now and see if the board has any clarifying questions.
Oh, okay, Melissa, I have one question.
Yes.
Okay, has the possibility of using the cameras on the smart boards in the classroom to allow the students to actually be able to at least have a visual...
Synchronous?
Yeah.
I think you're talking about synchronous, yeah. So we have ordered a large number of cameras because not every, classroom is set up with the camera that they need for that. And synchronous is an option. But what I'm saying here is that with the on-course classroom platform, it is built so that you could have a person that's facilitating that that is not even necessarily a certified teacher, because it's all of the contents there. It flows the teaching models of a perfect lesson. There's practice, there's modeling, there's all of the steps of teaching a child. So synchronous is an option, but it is not required in the on-course platform. That's supplemental. And some teachers may do that.
Yeah, I was just speaking to the effectiveness of the actual person-to-person
Yeah.
contact in the virtual classroom. I know how effective that is.
Well, virtual is a lot of independent, and I don't think it would be possible, humanly possible, to have person-to-person with the full virtual like most of the day. That's just, we don't have the human capital to do that.
Yeah.
Again, I think that there's a misconception in the public that they think you have to be Zooming in order for virtual to be having virtual classes, and that's not accurate. And I take responsibility for that. We should have come out very clearly in the very beginning with that information for the public.
Some of the questions I've gotten is regarding the teachers and the virtual students that may go back to the instruction from the school of their enrollment. You want to explain what are options that schools are doing? Because larger schools have more staff to pull from to do it. What about the smaller schools being able to teach their full virtual as well as the traditional students with the staff they have?
Okay, so, we have over, as I said earlier, 3,000 students that are in, that is K-6, that's not adding in the 7 through 12, who opted or who chose full virtual. And so we have been talking with our principals about taking the students that are at their school, that are on the roll at their school, that attend their school, and how they can support the full virtual learning at their school site. And so each school is different, so there's not one way that every school does this the same, but principals are looking at their current staff to determine, how they can make that work. We do have 2 schools in particular, 2 elementary schools that have over 300 virtual students each. And so we're having to work with them to figure out how we can support the teachers at that school and, providing the full virtual. I'm not sure if that answered the question.
Yeah.
Ms. Stilley, do you have a number on the 7th through 12th this time?
I don't have it. Let's see, on Friday, it was about 2,000. I think we were up, I'm sorry, it was about 1,000 for 7 through 12. That was Friday morning, and so the deadline was Friday night at midnight. And so I don't have that. But what we've noticed is that our high school students, our 7 through 12 students that have selected full virtual are a lot less than our elementary, so, by far. And we think that's true for a couple reasons. One is that they're social beings. When you get to 7 through 12, they're much more social. And then secondly, we think that we have less 7 through 12 that want virtual because they've had an opportunity to experience virtual, and they realize that it is, it's independent, even though there are Zoom meetings and calls and videos. It's a lot more, and they lose that face-to-face in the classroom.
Duncan?
Ms. Stilley, talk a little bit about, and because I know we've talked about this, that now that parents are experiencing this virtual, or that they have a better understanding of it, and if they decide that, hey, this is just not working for my child or my family, I need to get them back into a traditional classroom environment. I think some of them are concerned that they're locked in or something to that effect. Can you talk
Yes.
a little bit about that?
Yes, thank you for bringing that point up. I wanted to talk about that. So we've asked our parents we set a deadline, and so we've been hesitant about setting that deadline because, we wanted to give families time to make decisions. And I've talked with superintendents, my colleagues in other districts, and, many of them set deadlines after 2 weeks. And so we wanted to give families time to make that decision. However, what we saw was some fluctuation. So, today I'm virtual, next week I want to be in the classroom, this week I want to be virtual, and so forth. So we felt like we needed to set a firm deadline for all grade bands for full virtual because it impacts staffing. With students that are full virtual, you have to have teachers to teach them. We set that deadline for last Friday. But I have said this, and I have said it to the principals several times in our meetings, and we've put this out publicly, that once a parent decides that they want virtual or not for their student, that is for the semester. Okay, so once we get to December, and before we start the new semester, they can determine they want to go back into the regular classroom. Or there may be parents out there that want to do the full virtual in January, like for the second semester. So that is an option. But we have been very clear that for any student that is in full virtual, and they made that decision to be full virtual on Friday, if they are struggling, failing, it's not working out for them, we want to move them back into the building because we do not want any child to fail the whole first semester before we intervene. So that is very clear in terms of making sure that we intervene for students.
And so the procedure for that, Ms. Stilley, is that if it's not working and their child is in danger of failing, or some other significant reason where they need to get back into the classroom, do they just reach out to their principal? What's the process?
Well, the teacher, if it's an issue of them struggling with the virtual content, the teacher that's teaching them can potentially provide some interventions if the parent wants to leave them in the virtual. They can provide some interventions that can help the child get back on track. But I would contact I think contacting the school principal would be a good step to take, and then that school principal can take it from there and pull in the teacher teaching them and have like a virtual meeting to discuss the progress of the child and the parents' concerns.
Thank you.
I have a question, Ms. Tully. So some parents are under the impression that only EIP and 504 students can do blended. What is blended? Are we still doing that? Are we not doing that? Or is it still offered? How is that working?
Okay, so the blended model is not recommended. And the reason it's not recommended is because we really do not have the data to show if students will regress in that. Because if you think about it, with the blended model, the child can decide, the parent and the student can decide, well, I'm going to go 2 days a week to school and I'm going to be home 3 days. Or I'm going to go 3 days and I'm going to be home 2 days. And so obviously, and the teacher, the classroom teacher, not the on-course classroom portal that we built, but the classroom teacher will be giving those assignments on the days the student's not there. And what we're afraid of is that there's going to be a learning loss for those students, okay? Now, if it's a student that has health issues, or maybe, they go for cancer treatments, or there's different things that this student, then maybe it's the best model for them, okay? But we do not recommend it for all of our students as an option because we don't think that it's the best learning model, and we think there's going to be regression there. So that's our concern with blended, and I would recommend that, a parent talk to the teacher, the principal about it, but that's why principals are having conversations with parents and advising against the blended, because, we do not have the data to say that that it's a good thing or not, and we've lost enough instructional time this year with COVID and bringing back our students into the building that at this point our priority is to try to get our kids in the building. But we also respect that some parents don't want to send their kids to school because of COVID, and that's why we're doing the full virtual option for families that are in that situation. But the blended model is not a model that we feel confident about because we think there's going to be some learning gaps that's going to occur with kids, and we try to advise parents to that.
So we can comfortably say that we thought blended was a good idea at the beginning, but now that we look at the whole situation and get the data, it's best that a student's either in school or virtual, unless they have extenuating circumstances.
We always prefer face-to-face in the classroom 5 days a week. That's our preference. But we respect that some families are, because of the pandemic and the COVID, that they don't want to do that, and that's okay. And we will work to do the very best of our ability to educate their child virtually. But Robin, to your point, we hired a consultant with our CARES Act money, a portion of that, very, very small portion, to talk to us about staffing and our learning models. And that was one of the things that they brought up about the blended model, was that, they advised us against it until, we know more. There's really no one in the United States doing that model of, blended, where kids choose to stay home certain days a week and then go to school. And so they advise us against this, and that's when we begin to sort of pump the brakes on the blended model. Okay.
Any other questions?
I had, did you have an update on the number of actual full virtual from last week?
So we have right at 3,000 full virtual K-6. And we had, I don't have the latest number, but as of Friday morning, we had about 1,000 that were K-12. That the parents say, it's my choice to do full virtual.
And were you able to, we had talked last week about the fact that you had so many teachers coming out of the alternative school that were doing full virtual teachers, and you ended up getting enough teachers at each school to handle the overflow?
Well, we've talked to our principals about looking at their staff to help meet the needs of the virtual kids that are assigned to their school, that are enrolled there.
So we really don't have that since we had this setback these couple of days here.
Right.
Okay.
So this week is sort of like the planning and transitional week. So no, we have not. We're behind schedule on that.
Okay. Thank you.
I think some of the parents' concern is with the virtual, is it consistent with what the teacher is teaching in the classroom?
That's another good question. So the scope and sequence, you know, for our curriculum, first of all, it's the same curriculum. It's a tier 1, high-quality curriculum for both if you're sitting in the classroom or you're sitting on the couch doing full virtual. The scope and the sequence is the same, and so it's the same coverage. And so if there's any time loss, even with the virtual, those lessons can be caught, you know, you can catch those students up, but they have the same scope and sequence and the same expectations as students in the classroom.
Any others? All right. Thank you, Ms. Dennis.
Thank
Nothing
you.
else?
That's it. Thank you.
All right, item 4A. Well, deja vu here. Consider approval of the 2020-21 HVAC preventative maintenance contract for the north end area of the facilities. I'd like to explain a little bit of why, because we had some questions from some of the board members as why we were addressing this again. We did have a formal complaint after the last meeting with some technical issues with the making sure we didn't skirt any open meeting laws or proper advertisements for agenda items. And I think because of this whole situation, we're going to learn some ways to improve that, to make sure moving forward that we do a good job so that the public is aware of what we're doing, the vendors, the contractors, and moving forward, we want to make sure that it's an open and transparent policy and procedures. And after speaking with Mr. Moody and our legal advice, you know, he reaffirmed the fact that he didn't think that as a board we did anything illegal as far as crossing any lines. But one way to make sure that we get this right is to do a redo on some of this. And if we want to have a debate at that time, want to do it. And then from what I was reading, the best option moving forward would be a motion to reconsider. After getting a motion to reconsider in a second, we can debate that motion. If that motion were to pass, then we would go back to where we were at 2 weeks ago, where we could bring up a motion either for either one of the contractors, and at that point, we could debate and discuss. So at first, I'd like to hear a motion, if I can get one, for a motion to reconsider the North End contract on the heating and air.
I make a motion to reconsider.
We have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
I second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor to reconsider the North End area heating and air contract. Did I hear a question over here?
Yes, sir. I would just do a point of order that my understanding of Robert's Rules of Order is that a motion to reconsider at this point would be both untimely and a violation of Robert's Rules of Orders, as this is as the prior vote was a vote on a contract.
You're absolutely correct, and I'll read the next line from what you're quoting. It says, when the other party of the contract has been notified of the vote. So with that being said, since the contracts have not been signed, the parties have not been notified, then I think we fall under the criteria of reconsider being the appropriate measure.
Well, not to be argumentative, but it is my understanding that Mr. Morgan has been notified of the board's vote, both via public record and from our administration. I would assume that he has been notified. But again, for that reason, I don't believe that a motion to reconsider would be appropriate. I'm not attempting, and I want to be clear before I conclude my point of order, it's not my attempt in raising the point of order to cut off debate on this topic. I do think that some of the issues that were raised by the vendors' council were some good suggestions on how we can improve our practices going forward. You and I have discussed some ideas on how we can do that. I'm always open to finding ways that we can improve and be more transparent. We've done that over the years by going to board docs, by televising our meetings live. And again, I think that there's some things that we can do to improve on the way that we practice. I also want to be clear that I don't think that there was any attempt or desire by this board to try and do anything underhanded. What we did was what we've always done.
Are we debating and discussing?
No, I'm
now,
just
or are we,
raising
are we
the
still
point
on, are we still on the point of
The
order?
point of order is that a motion to reconsider at this point would be both untimely and a violation of Robert's Rules of Orders.
And then my question would be, have parties been notified of the contract since nothing's been signed? So, Mr. Moody, would you point us in the right direction on that? Keep in mind, this is just a motion to reconsider.
I'm unaware personally whether they've been notified.
Please step up to the microphone.
Could you come to the mic?
I don't know personally if they've been notified. I do know the contract was prepared, and I assume the administration had communication with Mr. Morgan.
But has the contract been signed?
The contracts have been issued, and the contracts have been returned, and they've been signed by the vendor. They have not been signed by the superintendent.
And I would, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Yep. My position on the superintendent's signature is that that is a ceremonial act by the superintendent in essentially recognizing the board's vote. But at the moment that the board approves or accepts the offer to contract, we have entered into a valid contract.
Then why did she sign them?
Again, it's a ceremony. My position would be that her signing a contract is more of in the form of a ceremonial nature, recognizing the board's.
And I can see your opinion on that, but still,
Yes, sir.
the written thing in here is notification and,
It's your ruling, Mr. Chair, on the point of order, subject to a request from the mover to challenge that ruling. In general, though, contract is enforced when there's a meeting of the minds. So there's an offer, there's an acceptance, then there becomes an enforceable obligation. Very often that's followed by a written contract that details all the various rights.
Right.
So that helps about the status of the contract.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Moody, wouldn't that subject us to some type of liability if the contract has been granted, signed by the acceptor?
Yes, sir. And unfortunately, in situations like this where there are competitive bids and there's a question about the award of the bid, you really have liability to either side at this point, no matter what your decisions are. So my advice is always to do what you think is the right thing, and then we'll deal with the consequences of the challenge.
and that was my conversation with Mr. Moody, was at this point, what I want to do as the board chairman, I'm not advocating for either contract. That's not my cup of tea and that's not my area. But I'm advocating for a clear, open, transparent process of making sure this happens correctly. And I think doing a motion to reconsider, even if it fails, at least it goes back and it addresses the issue to where it was an individual item on this agenda where parties could be present.
And again, I'm not trying, again, it's your ruling, and it's not my attempt to cut off having a discussion about this. I'm more than happy to hear from Mr. Sharkey. It's just, but if we're going to do that, I want to make sure that we're doing it in a way that is procedurally proper.
Absolutely.
My understanding of Robert's Rules of Order would be that a motion to reconsider at this point would be improper.
And I guess I get the last word on that.
Yes,
because
sir.
my understanding is always when contracts are signed by both parties, you have a meeting of the minds. And right now, we do not have a meeting of the minds, so the contract is not enforced, so we can still do a motion to reconsider. So we have a motion on the floor to reconsider the motion.
What, I need you
We
to
have a
rule
second.
on my objection. Are you,
I did, I just ruled on it
okay.
by saying that the contract is not in place because it's not signed by both parties.
So then at this time, Mr. Chairman, I would move to appeal the ruling of the chair on my point of order.
Okay, tell me what the process of that is, because
So we would need,
you just passed my expertise.
That's then subject to the vote of the rest of the body as to whether or not to maintain your ruling or not. So he's challenging your ruling. So the motion to challenge your ruling will be a motion to overrule your ruling.
Okay, and that is a motion to reconsider cannot be done right now because he feels that we have a contract in place. I feel, since we don't have a signature, that the contract is not in place. So, any discussion on that?
Ready to vote?
I guess do I need a second on a motion to appeal? I don't think I do, but
I'll second it. We need
Okay, we have
to.
a motion and a second to appeal the decision. Electronic voting, please.
So a
Okay,
yes,
before-
so a yes means that we're agreeing with Mr. Duncan?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so we are voting whether or not to,
Whether or not that we can even have a motion to reconsider,
okay.
that it's a viable motion in parliamentary law. And if we don't get past that point, we can't get to discussion, we can't get to debate, we will still have the public input. Mr. Sharkey will still have a chance to address the board on this agenda item. But right now, the vote is,
Cindy, do you have the request for the,
Yes, he's got it up here.
oh, you have it right here.
Yes.
Okay, so could you read that so that we could be clear on it before the vote?
what Mr. Duncan's referring to?
Yes.
Let's see.
Oh, on Robert's Rules of Order?
Or what he's wanting to talk about.
The motion to reconsider, or are you talking about
He's
the?
talking about the input, what Mr. Sharkey said in the input.
Well, I was going to let him get to the input once we got to the motion to reconsider, but we can do it at any time.
Well,
In all fairness, I don't know how this motion will come out, but if it gets granted, we may not get to the agenda item, so,
Well, we're still on the agenda item, and public input is still welcomed regardless whether it's a debatable issue or
I
not.
understand that. But I'm just thinking, you may want, if that's the end of all voting that's taken, you ought to have public input before any kind of voting. is taken.
You're absolutely correct. So at this time, I'd like to ask Mr. Sharkey if he would. Mr. Sharkey, according to our guidelines, you have 3 minutes and a public input on agenda items. So,
I'm Chase Sharkey with Sharkey Mechanical. Actually, I got a speech here that I was going to put together, but I thought I had 5 minutes, but I only have 3. But my question is the administration sought out a rating process based off of experience, employees, and pricing. Not only were we the $28,000 lower contractor, we are a more competent contractor. And I want an explanation, the taxpayers of this parish want an explanation of how I got rejected and how Morgan Mechanical got put on the ballot. If we want to talk about laws, how did I get taken off, which I was only supposed to be on the agenda, and then a whole nother company get put on the agenda and voted for? So I have a spiel here, but I already know how the outcome is going to be. The public knows how the outcome is going to be. But I want an explanation, and the public wants an explanation from every board member that voted no on why they voted no.
and we can't respond to public comment, Chase, I'm sorry.
Okay, well, that's my
But
first
it's your
question.
time to talk, so if you want to talk,
And
you're
my
welcome.
second question is, if there's anyone on the board that needs to recuse themselves of voting due to monetary contributions, I please ask you to do that. Thank you.
Okay, public input's been had. The motion on the floor right now is to appeal my decision on the validity of a motion to reconsider. So a no vote would say that we can't have a motion to reconsider. A yes vote would say yes, the contract is not signed, the contract is not valid. Is that correct?
I thought we was doing it opposite.
But you can determine how you want the votes.
Well, how did you-
Depending on how that reads.
Done.
How did you write it up?
Motion to appeal the rule of the board president.
Okay, so the motion to appeal. So if you want to appeal, it's a yes vote.
Which means that overturns your
Right.
decision. Okay,
So yes vote overturns the chair's ruling.
correct.
A yes
Correct.
vote is for Brett, a no vote is for Tom, basically.
Right.
It's right and wrong.
Okay.
Okay, call for vote.
Online voting is open. Online voting is closed. Motion passes with 3 noes. Mr. Toller, Ms. Abrams, and Mr. Moore voted no.
Okay, so the appeal's been granted, so the motion dies by parliamentary law. We move on to board member comments. Mr. Bush.
There's a lot to say about a lot of things. But it's very unprofessional and disrespectful to be called the names that I've been called over this situation, and the people involved, I've never met either side. I wouldn't know. So I think that absolutely, I agree with you both, Mr. Duncan, Mr. Tolar. There's a way that we probably can improve on this situation if it ever happens again, and I'd be willing to listen to that. Second of all, I think we called school off today, and Miss Philly, you can help me, only because we had 2 of our schools used as shelters, correct? And I wonder how we can revisit that situation to where on days like today, and listen, I agree with better safe than sorry, I understand that. But when we get up in the morning or last night when we realized we were safe today, but I think the biggest thing were we had 2 schools that were sheltered, so we couldn't open today. Is that maybe led in that decision? It didn't?
That wasn't the deciding factor.
Okay, but would it have mattered in any shape, size, or form?
I think the deciding factor, and I'll defer to the
Speak in the
president,
microphone.
that there was still a threat of
Okay.
storm coming our way last night when the decision was made.
Gotcha. No, I was just thinking our schools being shelters, that there might be a way we could have rec parks or something like that be involved if it's emergency, something like this, that we could have school. But thank you, Mr. President, that's it.
Ms. Simmons?
No thanks.
Mr. Duncan? Ms. Richards? Mr. Mingus?
Start with me. I'm grateful that we did not have the storms. Whether we opened school today or not was very important yesterday afternoon because we didn't really know. I'm grateful for the activities of our people who had to work for the emergency preparedness building to make sure we were safe. So thank you, all your staff, for going above and beyond. And then as far as the contracts, the board, as a veteran member of this board, we go over the contracts, we go over the bids the best that we can. Mr. Sharkey, I'm sure you would do a great job. I hope that you will bid again for other jobs because you're a young man and we need young men like you. But for me, I just felt like what we needed to do, as a finance committee can recommend what they feel, the full board votes for a recommendation or against a recommendation. The full board doesn't have to accept any recommendation.
But
And,
my question was
you know.
why did they take that?
You can't.
Well, we're not responding to that. We're doing our public time. I mean, we don't mean to discern anything that you do. We know Mr. Morgan has done a great job for us. I know you've worked for him, and I'm sure you learned a lot, and you do great work. And we hope that you'll come back and bid again in the future for, whatever we may put out there. And that's how business works. And, we don't mean any disrespect to you or any other business.
Mr. Westmoreland?
I'm good, thank you.
Mr. Moore?
Yeah, well, I know that there's been a lot of anxiety that has gone out, that parents have experienced, some of the students especially. And I'm going to address the virtual learning thing. I still think that it is probably the best way right now. I know that we are benefiting tremendously by just learning the new technology and learning how to input this new system. I know this is going to serve us in the future whenever there's a kid who can't make it to school. This may be an avenue to keep him up to par. But I want to encourage parents to reach out to the teachers, to get help when you need it, and to not give up because the system is still being worked out. I mean, nothing is written in stone yet. So while they're making adjustments and improving the system, I just want to encourage you to hang in there. And for the teachers who have been, successful, in my opinion, as far as getting this implemented, my congratulations goes out to you. And I'm praying for the kids who are going back to school. I still have that apprehension about children being in school during this pandemic. Not only for the children, but for the parents who might be affected by it. And so I just want to encourage everyone to do your best to try and stick with the distant learning if you're doing it.
Ms. Abrams?
I just want to say on the situation with Morgan and Sharkey, I know neither one of these gentlemen. I think I met Mr. Sharkey one time at somewhere in public when we were having the election, but I don't know either one of them. When I voted for the way I voted, it was because it was presented to us, North End, South End, and we have many contracts where we do North End, South End, and I just thought it was a good idea to give somebody on the North End a chance to be able to do some work, because as we all know, if you have that big of an area, Tangipahoa Parish is so big, we have 30-something schools, that's a lot of work to do for one person, no matter how many employees you have. So I figured give somebody else a chance on the North End. That's the only reason that I voted the way I voted. So I wanted to make that clear. And as far as the schooling, parents, please be patient. Everything is changing. That's what I was trying to express with the blended schooling. Yes, we did think that was going to be a good idea, but things change. Just like the COVID situation with the state, they're implementing other things and giving us different things every month. Every phase 3, phase 2, something different happens. That's how we're working right now with Tangipahoa Parish School System. We're all new at this just like everybody else, and we're trying to make it work. We're working on this just as much as we can, and the administration is working endlessly hours to try to make things work for everybody, because the children are what's the most important, and that's what they're thinking about.
Absolutely. First, I want to lift up the Lee family. Longtime employee of ours, Mr. Rod Lee, passed away this morning as a result of COVID. His daughter, Dr. Varnado, is our principal at Chesbro. So obviously want to keep them in our thoughts and our prayers. It gets close to home when something like that happens, and it brings back the need and the necessity for the safety. The other thing that I wanted to mention just real quick, before I got on the board, as most of you know, I cut grass part-time. I was approached by several principals to cut grass at some of our schools, and I really just didn't have the time because I had other obligations. And then at one point, I lost a couple big contracts, and I went back, and the principal had contacted me, and I said, I want to do that. And for a year and a half, I kid you not, I tried to bid on grass cutting for Tangipahoa Parish. A year and a half. Even got to the point where I went to Miss Pittman McDaniel, had Miss Gale help me try to get my foot in the door with somebody. And for a year and a half, not only did I not get a chance to do the work, but I never got a chance to even put a bid in. And that was one of the deciding factors of why I wanted to serve on this board, is because I wanted to see more open and more transparency in the bidding and the process of awarding contracts and getting vendors, because when we do something like take a $28,000 higher bid, not only do we hurt ourselves in the future for competitive bidding, but we just shot ourselves in the foot for getting vendors that want to take the time to do a multi-page RFP for us to fill out all these answers and stuff that Mr. Snoddelbach needs and Mr. Cavetta need to make these decisions. So after a year and a half, I finally just gave up on the grass cutting altogether. But I want to applaud the administration on making great strides in trying to break some of this stuff up. We've done it with architects, we've done it with pest control, we've done it with grass cutting, to try to get some smaller contracts and things to put back in place so that people can bid on that in smaller companies. Because I hear it, I don't know if y'all hear it, but I hear it from electrical contractors, I hear it from grass cutters, I hear it from all different contractors throughout the world that wants, how do I get to do some work for y'all? How do I hear it all the time. And then this comes up in this situation where we reject the Finance Committee's decision and then we throw in a new motion without it being an individual advertised. I see the complaint, I see the frustration, I see the gripe. But I do want to applaud the administration because they took the politics out of the selection process. They took the politics out of the RFP process And when the decision was made, I want to apologize to the public because this board
That's objective.
put it
There
all.
wasn't any politics.
It's my
involved
turn,
in
Mr.
this.
Bush.
No, and you're right.
I
It's
called-
not
This is-
$28,000 difference in the bid.
It is
Public-
too.
The public should read the entire bid. It's a
Since you're gonna
$28,000 difference in
Mr. Bush, if
percentage.
you want to interject, I suggest you pick up a paper and read the
As
numbers.
the years go on, the helper salary is a big difference. The helper salary is a big difference, and it's a $28,000.
I call the meeting back to order because I was in the middle of saying something when I was rudely
Understand.
interjected by another board member. I want to say I apologize to the public
You have to
for
talk
us putting
truth,
politics
friend.
back in this process and making a mockery of how we do business.
You have to talk truth, friend.
Anybody else? Ms. Dilley?
Honesty would go a long ways in savings.
Anybody else? I don't want to close out with that without you
Tell the
having a
truth,
chance to
man.
rebut.
Tell the truth.
We do have a general input, so we'll move on. Mr. Christopher Hilton. And on general input, Mr. Hilton, you do have 5 minutes to address the board. We thank you for your participation.
Yes, sir. This is my first time standing before the board, and I do want to thank you guys for everything you're doing during this time. However, I do want to point out some hypocrisy. Back in June, July, the LHSAA, they stated that the football programs, full contact sports, would be in phase 4. Recently, they've been granted the ability to start up practice, and which really defies what our goal is with COVID. Act 9, according to the news outlets, actually gives them release from liability. So they're able to do this, and you guys are allowing this to go on. So my thing is with just being general public, this is a full contact sport. My kids in Chesbrough Elementary in class have to stay 3 foot away from each other. I prefer to stay at least 6 feet away from you. In full contact, that means you're going to be sweated, touched, and everything else. In practice, you're going to be touching things that others are going to touch. We know this is actually processed or passed on by touching from particles being spit out. This is a known fact. The fact of it is, the hypocrisy in this is, my high school student, which attends Jules Sumner, he cannot go to school because we have restriction. We're trying to protect those children. Now, I'm not sure how the process works, if there's a way to throw this on the agenda to at least have a vote. But it's up to you guys, as Tangipahoa Parish School Board, to determine whether or not the football programs can continue in our parish. Should we put our children to risk within the football program? Remember, 22 students are going to be on the field sweating, touching each other during this process. And we can't even get 3 feet from each other during class time. We can't even go to school full time. Now, with that being said, I would like to offer a suggestion. My suggestion is real simple. It's not very popular with people who have actually went to the state and more or less lobbied and won to return in phase 3, not phase 4, like the original plan was, but in phase 3 in order to do this sport of full contact. My suggestion is real simple: to stop the program and continue on with the, I call it charades, of keeping our high school students out because the governor says no. Or, my other part of the suggestion is to, in fact, defy the governor's order, putting in place full-time students in high school, regardless of what they're doing, and also continue the football programs. So without continuing the programs, that means no practice. We cannot put our students at risk. In my high school days, 75 students were allowed to come out to practice. You have 75 students at 5A school, Ponchatoula. you have to have at least 100 people, maybe even on that field, perhaps. I drive from Baton Rouge from work. I see it central. The entire school is pretty much on the field. So I would hope that you could do some sort of emergency vote on this to either put the students back in and continue this football program and practicing, or continue the ship that we have already set sail and stop this from happening in our parish, the football program. So with that being said, I do want to ask the legal experts here if there's a possibility to have that on the agenda tonight to vote.
No, sir. It can't be. This is just a time for general input from the
In
public.
that case, please, I beg you, put it on the agenda as soon as possible, because you have 22 students that will be taking that field against another place in other areas, and this is going to continue the spread of this COVID. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hilton. Thank you for your participation tonight. Nothing being said? Anything else? Meeting adjourned.